When your mind goes dark and you've lost direction.
Welcome to Psychology to Live By. In this roundtable, we'll discuss the music, creativity and mental health podcast I recorded with Martin Kerr, who's a British-Canadian singer-songwriter based in Edmonton, Canada. Joining us today, we have my inspiring friends from Nettwerk Music. Terry McBride, Chairman and CEO, Colleen Novak, Artist Manager, Chris Norwood, Chief Strategy Officer, and Karen Mix, Director, People and Operations. Our topics, as usual, are creativity and music and their relation to mental health, with focus on what challenges our well-being and creativity and what Martin has found that helps him stay happy and well. It was a wonderful conversation with Martin. He shared what he's found that helps him balance music, relationships and family life, and we discussed many topics, including how success is the result of grassroots community building, years of it, how music is fundamentally about community, music as communication and sharing emotional truths, how intrinsic motivation is the key to a successful creative life, and how singing and performing are both therapeutic and restorative, and of course, other topics. But now to my good friends from Nettwerk Music. And here they are. How are we? We all well?
Doing well.
Doing well. Excellent.
Surviving.
Well, surviving.
Survived LA.
Oh, yes, you've been down to LA, yeah. Okay, not to be diverted though. I hope you enjoyed listening to and watching this podcast as much as I had recording it. And you know, as always, I'm really curious about your thoughts, your insights, and what typically you will add to the depth of understanding and insights. So, is someone itching to kick us off here?
Yes.
Terry.
Please expand on this concept of undermind and the artistic connecting to the undermind.
Okay. So there's a guy called Guy. So Guy Claxton is a British psychologist, and he wrote a book called The Undermind. And it has a big overlay with what we generally mean by the unconscious. But I think he was trying to get to this idea that there's a huge amount of intelligence at work outside our conscious awareness. So the idea is our conscious awareness is a very small proportion of our deep thinking, right? And so I guess he was trying to redress the balance of what because the Freudian thing would tend to see the unconscious as sort of primitive in a way, right? And as wild and untamed. But Claxton's work, and indeed my research, my doctoral research, was pointing to quite the opposite, that it's the complexity of the processing that cannot be held in consciousness. So not only is it not more primitive, it's actually deeper and wider and more complex. And in a sense, when a person has a creative insight, like Martin was describing one in his car on the way to the studio, he was worried about having to pay for this thing out of his credit card. He said it kind of fell upon him, and this is quite a common experience that people have, this sort of phenomenology of it suddenly having this insight, and it could be waking up in the morning, or it could be, obviously it's come, in my view, it has not come from the heavens. It's not been beamed into us by extraterrestrials, and it's not mystical in that sense. So clearly it's been worked out somewhere, and it's in that person's brain. But because we're not conscious of it, when it arrives, it can be very surprising, shocking even, and it may arrive in a completeness that we find very surprising, right? So that's what Claxton meant by the undermind. It's this, and if you think about it, we've all had the experience. there's a problem in your life or something that's really important to you, and it's unclear, it's ambiguous, and you might go to sleep on it, and you wake up in the morning and boom, there's, maybe not the whole answer, but a very significant insight into it. Now, how's that happen? Well, I think
that usually happens after I have a coffee.
Yeah, well, drug and alcohol has been related to this phenomenon, but yeah. So,
are you saying that I'm a drug taker?
yes,
Caffeine, I guess so.
I guess, but who isn't? So, yeah, and obviously it. I think it was Louis Pasteur said, he talked about what he called the prepared mind. When he said it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. So the prepared, it's almost like this, and this is my view anyway, that we work on something till we get to a point of impasse and frustration. But it's made a significant mark on our whole psychic system because it's anxiety provoking, it's important to us. So although we're not consciously thinking about it, the system is trying to solve it. And dreams may be one avenue for that, or altered experience, as in drugs. But more commonly, when the mind is off doing its thing in, the default mode network's kicking in and we're daydreaming or something like that, it's exploring this thing that's still weighted in the system as needing to be resolved. You guys know what that's like. You wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, there it is, It can't just be there that I've woken up and then I've thought about it. It's often the thing that wakes us up. Yeah.
No, usually it's an 8-year-old
Yeah.
going like that.
Fantastic. Other people have pets
nightmare.
that do that. They have cats that do that for them, lick their face or something. All right. So is that a satisfactory answer?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thought that you have a situation, you can't solve it, moves from your conscious to your subconscious, and within your subconscious, which is so much more powerful than what your conscious is, it's still processing.
Yeah.
So I think in Martin's case, there was pressure to write a song because they wanted to write a song that would make me happy. And as such, he was probably processing it, and then all of a sudden it just pops in. I've heard many an artist. I mean, Sarah's Angel came as a whole song. These iconic songs just seem to arrive completely done, and they seem to fall out of the sky. So I kind of get that.
But not to a person who hasn't done thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of playing music and writing songs, right?
Yeah, no, I get that. Cool.
Yeah, so there's this background. Yeah. So, I mean, I think I said to Martin, I trust intuition is a really important thing, this intuitive insight, for example. But I only trust the intuition of people who have expertise in that domain. Right? Because intuition is what we call, it's a kind of what we call thin slicing. It's a sudden take. It's like the mind takes a quick cross section of whatever reality is confronting us and says, this is what I think it is. A bit like a really experienced, firefighter going into a building and suddenly saying, get out.
Yeah.
And it's picked up all this intuitive data, not consciously yet, that's mapped onto his experience, and maybe it's a sound which is a precursor to an explosion or something like that. And there's many examples of this. Yeah. So it's sudden, but fortune favors the prepared mind is another famous quote. Or I think it was Gary Player, the golfer, when he was in a post. He won a tournament, and in the press conference afterwards, some impertinent media person said to him, "That was lucky. That was a lucky putt." And Player said to him, "It's funny, the more and more I practice, the luckier I seem to get." All right. What else, guys?
Who's next?
I can go.
Thank
One
you,
of the
Colleen.
things that stuck out to me, I think, from a manager's perspective,
Yeah.
he made a comment, most people don't know what they're talking about. And I think that's something that artists deal with all the time. That you have these people who kind of hold the control over their lives, basically, or definitely their success in a lot of ways. And often they don't know. It's hard to they hear something for sure, and I think there's a genuine talent there, but I think sometimes they just don't know, and you're taking a risk or you're not taking a risk, and artists have to navigate that.
I found that particularly profound and personally relevant, in that, obviously, for example, you guys, you have expertise, and Martin signed up with you, and for a good reason, right? So in other words, you know stuff he doesn't know, and he knows stuff you don't know, and maybe together, But there's it's something else that he's getting at there, isn't it? It's about the way a particular artist is going to be able to move forward and be successful. It's going to be quite different across artists, and sometimes what people do is they say, well, I've done it this way, so that therefore that's going to work for you. And that's what I think what he was arguing against. And I completely agree with that. It's exactly the same in the therapeutic room. The inexperienced therapist will think they've got the answers for people. And it has worked for other people. And so they give that, they try to push people down a pathway. And it's my experience, people find their own pathway.
I think it's it's real life every day. Most people don't know anything about anything.
I think that's true as well. And I think that's where I was actually relating to. It's like, oh fuck, we're all in the dark here, so that led then to his conversation about following his intuition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is amazing. You have to.
It is. It is, because his story was very interesting, wasn't it? About being on Canadian Idol and it was interesting on a number of levels. One is that this was the accredited way, or the approved way of becoming known, and it didn't work for him. Plus, he didn't like it, because it took him away from that direct connection with and going back to that was his pathway to success, which looks very different to the mega star, but as you said, he never aspired to be a big star. He just wanted to be a successful musician. Yeah, I know, but it made me think, Colleen, about my lack of guts in following my, the number of times that I have not followed my intuition, and I've done what I thought, other people thought I should do. So I'm still chewing on that one. Yeah, that's right, Terry. It's all right. That just leaves the two of you. You could fight over who's going to be next.
Shall we arm wrestle, Chris?
Yeah,
you go ahead, Karen.
Oh, well, you're in Terry's office, so you have seniority
I'm the boss.
temporarily.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to decide what to lean into here, because there were a lot of great takeaways, and I think Colleen hit one that was learning by your own experience. I think those what he was getting at is like, I found that fascinating, and I feel like that's something that I didn't really come till much later in life. And with my own kids, I would love for them to, you don't have to be told what to do. You're going to take what your own learnings from an experience. And even if that's a mistake, great. What did you learn from that mistake? But I think the big thing that really sat with me, coming from my role was the connection with other humans and that communal and community spirit and idea. He talked about being a solo artist and the solidarity of that, where you could see how just getting into a lonely space where depression might enter, and then once he's on stage or connecting with a group of people, how impactful that is. I think at Nettwerk, that's a big theme of who we are and what we do with our artists. And I think even within our own staff, like that communal sense. And I don't really have a particular question, but it just that landed with me of how important, even more important today, of that connection with other humans is than it ever has been.
Oh gosh, there's so many things here. Yes, I mean, it's clear that he's worked out his way that he actually keeps his balance better if he's performing frequently. And that puts him into that direct connection. He also said that he's hopeless at actually doing his own production, so he has to collaborate with other people. But again, he told that lovely story, about when he visited Western Samoa.
That was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Samoans are singing in perfect 4-part harmony, so I think that communal aspect of singing, I mean, that's really what it's for. There's studies done on, cross-cultural studies on mothers who sing to their babies, Sometimes it's not actually singing, it's just a sort of musical prosody, a kind of, and it seems, so like, I think this is deeply wired in, the musicality thing, and it's another layer of our means of expressing all sorts of things like emotions, solidarity. I can't remember, it was a sociologist who called it collective effervescence. Like you're in a football crowd or you're in a choir, and there's this just sense that you can't really get in another way of being connected to the people around you, and you're of one voice. So it transcends you, but it includes you. So it. And now the other thing that that triggered in my mind when you were talking about never been more important. At the moment, I'm super big fan of Jonathan Haidt's work around social media, and it's not just about can we stop under 16-year-olds getting sucked into that vortex. It's about getting them outside with their friends and experimenting and playing and making mistakes and actually getting into the analog world and doing stuff. And as soon as you do that with kids, they love it, especially if there's no parents around.
Yeah.
Which all of us would remember, right? It's from our
100%.
childhoods.
That was, see you when I see you.
Yep.
Just being outside. Yeah, it was magical.
Yeah, and not being supervised.
Yeah.
And often having to figure out how to do things yourself, and thereby the satisfaction, right? And so I think that there's a lot in what Martin was talking about, like in his own journey of just sort of suck it and see and try and, and following his intuition. The subtitle of my thesis was Crooked Paths to Insight, right? And the idea is you can't go straight there. You got to suck it and see. You got to try stuff, but if you keep following your intuition, you'll get there. Right? This is a lot. Speaking of a lot, that leaves Chris.
It's funny. I thought the whole thing was a really interesting conversation. The part that really kind of caused me to sit up and really think was, I think, sort of the same area as Karen's here. And that's that discussion around connection and a life well lived. I read a book over the holidays called The Good Life. And it was written by two Harvard professors who are the current stewards of the world's longest longitudinal study on human happiness, and they've been following these people around for like
Yeah.
80 years.
What's the lead author's name is uh, it might
Robert
pop in later.
something. Yeah,
Huh?
yeah. I don't, Robert,
Yeah.
Robert something. Anyway,
Yeah, it is Robert something. Yeah.
And so this book was really interesting to me, and it, there's where I'm going is that the common theme that if they're boiling the whole the ocean of human happiness into a common thread, it's the importance of personal relationships and connection. And the people who look back and say that that is a life well lived, the people who have scored the happiest are the people who just have those really strong interpersonal relationships and strong sense of connection to the people that are important to them. And it extends beyond even just like obviously the most important personal relationships we have to like work relationships, school friend groups, the person that you're sitting next to on the train, right? Like it can be these are all opportunities for that connection. Um, and as you and Martin were talking about this, it sort of stuck out to me that like music obviously serves such a common. There's a very strong overlap here, in that music can be this mirror or window into the human experience, right? That allows that listener to connect to the artist through this feeling of saying, oh, that experience that they're talking about is the same one that I'm going through. And I didn't know that other people were going through it the same way I am, right? So it allows them to feel this like connection to the artist, and in the sense of a concert with the audience, right, where they're all saying, oh, we're all here for this same artist, meaning that we've all sort of gone through these same experiences that were really resonant for us. And it break down these barriers of loneliness and stuff like that. So also riffing off of what Karen was saying, to me, like that where this thought like continued for me was, it is in some way validating also, I think, for me professionally, for what we do. So much of I feel like what we're trying to do is just connect the right artist with the right audience member that is the person that is going to connect with the message that they're saying.
Yeah.
And validating in the sense that like whether the part we play in that is big or small, it's a noble pursuit, and it enriches people's lives.
Beautiful. Very nicely said. Somewhere in this discussion with him, with Martin, I talked about the two types of happiness that the ancient Greeks identified: the hedonic, which is a more common view of what makes us happy. It's sort of nice stuff like single malts or chocolate. Favorite examples. But then there's the eudemonic, which is much more down the line of what you're talking about, Chris, and certainly what Martin was talking about, the sense of a meaning and purpose beyond self, and that self is connected in some way to the world and to other people. There's a commonality. We're not alone. So I completely agree, and you can see with Martin, that's the real driver. Like he said right up front, I never really, I didn't want to be a star. I just wanted to sing to people, and time and time again, it's rejuvenating for him, and moving forward. But I also like what you the distinction you drew there in your role. It's about connecting this artist to that fan, because obviously some artists leave us cold and other people think they're just absolutely fantastic, and that's just obviously the same as relationships, right?
Yep.
And so there's a real art in that, in getting a sense of who's the audience for this person, and bringing them together. So you're like matchmakers. You're getting married en masse, hopefully. Is that polygamous?
Musical polygamist?
Yeah.
We'll allow it.
Yeah, we'll allow it. But I completely agree. And it was just really, Like I rewatched the podcast before this because I recorded it a while back, and it's just really what's the word, reassuring or heartening to listen to the way that he frames his music, right? I mean, he's very earnest, I think, in many ways, and very sincere, and it really comes through, and of course, it just means he's going to be successful. He's going to have a good life. He's going to have a good marriage, and the kids will be good. He's really figured it out, and there's a kind of humility in that. The humility is, I've been reading about this recently, actually, that he embodies for me is a thing called appreciative humility. And sort of goes something like this. So appreciative humility is basically a person who is fairly, is confident enough in themselves such that they realise that they can appreciate other people, and they can appreciate other people might know more or can contribute more. So, that kind of ego strength is the opposite of vanity and the opposite of egotism and narcissism, because, yeah, I'm fine. In fact, I've stopped worrying about myself, and now I can really appreciate others, right? And I think Martin embodies that. You can kind of see he doesn't get above himself. Yeah. Beautiful. As of course, the four people arrayed in front of me here are perfect examples of appreciative humility. I'm still working on it. So once again, thank you so much, guys, for taking the time to watch the podcast and to share your views. And we'll draw a line on this one, and look forward to when we catch up next. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And the very uplifting song that's been playing in the background is entitled Don't Listen to Me by Martin Kerr.
I'll be walking right beside you as you figure it out.